This is a Silver Linings Handbook podcast bonus episode. I'm Jason Blair. Yesterday was the day. Richard Allen was convicted on all counts in the 2017 Delphi, Indiana murders of 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German. Without the ingenuity and the courage of 14-year-old Libby, investigators still may not have solved the 2017 murders of her and her best friend, Abby. Libby's quick instinct to turn on her cell phone camera and record the menacing-looking man approaching her and Abby on an old, abandoned railroad bridge in Delphi, Indiana, provided a damning piece of evidence against Richard Allen, the man who was just convicted yesterday of their kidnapping and murders. The crime was initially dubbed the Snapchat murders, and its resolution is a testament to the power of modern technology in solving crime. But that same technology that allowed Libby to disseminate pictures of her abductor has broken down many barriers to entry in publishing that have ushered in an era of reckless amateur investigations and conspiracy theories that have shaken public faith in the justice system. The victims' families in this case were re-victimized. Innocent people were accused of crimes with no basis in fact. True crime fans and web sleuths misled and were misled. The justice system was nearly derailed. But the family stood there with grace, and some journalists, attorneys, and other commentators like Kevin Greenlee and Áine Cain of the Murder Sheet and Brett and Alice of the prosecutors stood and held the wall in the pursuit of truth, honesty, and justice. Kevin and Áine join me today for this bonus episode on the resolution of the case and the important role, in my words, that they played in bearing witness. Kevin and Áine, thank you for having this conversation with me today. This morning, one of my colleagues who doesn't follow the Delphi case but knows that I care about it, said that one of the things that she had noticed was that she was surprised by was the outpouring of emotions by so many people related to this case. And I started following the case. Really, I heard about it when it initially happened and started truly following it during the pandemic. And I just know that a lot of people have been vested. And you guys talked about this in your last episode about the law enforcement officers, the prosecutors, the families being vested in a resolution. But I also think the journalists, the listeners, the viewers. And I was just curious what it's felt like for you guys and what kind of reactions to it you've seen.
That's a really good question. And yeah, you're definitely right. I think this case has touched a lot of people's hearts. A lot of people feel very emotionally invested in it for good or for ill. And I guess we've definitely seen that. I feel like I love our listeners from our emails and from our Facebook group. People have been super respectful and centering, mourning the victims and noting that at the end of the day, even if there's been a resolution, that doesn't mean that there's closure for anybody. It's these girls have been horribly murdered and nothing changes that. But it is a time for reflection on what was lost and who these girls were. And I think that's super important. And then I guess for us on a personal level is I can speak for myself and Kevin can tell you how he feels. But I feel a little bit numb. I don't really it doesn't it feels like it's over, but it also kind of doesn't. I keep on thinking oh well, gotta figure out the line or like almost like it's still going on in my mind. So I'm just kind of confused, I think.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at. It's hard to process for the last 4 or 5 weeks, every moment of our time has been pretty strictly controlled and regimented, and has been focused in some way on this case, more specifically on this trial. And now it's over, so it's difficult to process and think about and realize. And I'm very gratified that the verdict was rendered, and I feel satisfied it was the correct verdict and justice was done. And I just wish there was more that could be done, because nothing can be done to bring those girls back. So I'm happy where we are, and I'm grateful for all the people who worked so hard for this result, despite facing awful obstacles, including people online just saying terrible things about them. But I'm sad that the effort had to be made, and I'm sad that we've lost these girls forever.
Yeah. What you guys both said made me think of something that, the three of us, Brett and Alice at the prosecutors, and others have all been a part of, in addition to covering the case, we've been a part of this fight to hold creators within our community, to hold our community of true crime creators accountable for the way that we cover this case. And some days it felt like a daily war, and all that energy was going into it. And part of the reason why that energy was going into it was for truth, for justice, to have honesty for the listeners, but also for the girls. And I felt very much like I was elated. I could feel the tears well up in my eyes. And I was elated in part because I didn't, I wanted the girls to have justice. I did not want the people who were participating in all these bad behaviors to have a win that would harm the families, that would harm our broader community. But after that moment, I felt like I ran into a brick wall. And in that brick wall was nothing but Abby and Libby. And just really, it's allowed me to, I think, feel what it's all truly about, kind of like what you guys are saying. And that part of that confusion, I think, for me, is we've been fighting this battle and we've been fighting for this justice, and now we can sit with them, the victims, if that makes sense.
Jason, that is so well said. And just like I can hear the emotion in your voice, and I know how much this case has come to mean to you. But also, I just want to say, like, you have kept us sane throughout this process. I mean, the amount of times I think we were like losing our minds behind the scene because of like some horrible behavior, or just this feeling that like the girls were getting lost in all of this. And the amount of times that you like helped us come back from the brink of just being like, what it, like, because at times it has felt completely futile. Like, oh, no matter what we do, there's all of this harm being done, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. And I just want to say thank you, because you've been a huge rock for us throughout this whole thing.
And you're absolutely right. We've been fighting for so long and so hard. But yesterday and some of the testimony in this trial and stuff was a reminder of why we fight. And we fight for people like Abby and Libby, so that the truth can be told about their lives and how they died.
I'm going to say this. I think part of the defense, and here's the thing. I'm a big believer in defense attorneys. I love defense attorneys. Defense attorneys make it so that our system can work and people's rights are protected. So I will always, when people kind of come to me and say like, oh, defense attorneys, it's like, no, you're generalizing. I do have a problem though when a defense strategy seems to be essentially like blame other people for any manner of ills and spread conspiracy theories around that sort of unravels our shared reality. I just don't feel like that's the truth, and so therefore I'm biased against that. I don't like it, and I feel like getting people to kind of understand the truth throughout this process has been something that we've very very much taken seriously. But in this case, it felt like it kind of came to a head in the courtroom where we were watching this strategy unfold, where it didn't seem to be like grappling with any of the evidence or circumstances of the day of February 13th, 2017. It really just seemed to be like throw a bunch of stuff around and, try to, I don't know, like kind of distract people. And so it was just kind of fascinating to see that go from the online sphere to the actual courtroom.
Yeah. And first, let me say, it's been a two-way street, right? You guys have kept me, I've dealt with a lot this year, and you have kept me sane too. And I'm grateful that I've been able to be helpful with you. I'm grateful that we've been able to walk together on this battle related to truth and ethics in our profession. And one of the things that all of this reminds me of is some earlier conversations that we've had about the defense strategy, because I also believe that defense attorneys are crucial to protecting the Constitution. I think defense attorneys wrap themselves in the Constitution, and they should, because not only can our individual rights not be protected without them and their role, I don't think we as a broader public can have trust in our justice system if there are not fierce advocates. But part of my real challenge here is I think that sometimes, because people have an important role, and that important role is to ensure justice and protection for clients, that they think that that end, which is enormously important, justifies any means. And I don't think that's responsible. And I look at this case and I think of the victims' families and the harm that's come to them, the accusations against them, the callousness they've dealt with. I think about all the other people, whether it was people doing side-by-sides on Reddit or names that were thrown out there, or people that the defense attorneys accused with what the judge has decided had no basis in fact. I think about the man who committed suicide. I think about his friend who took the leak. I think about Mark Cohen, who is the one who reported to you. And even some of the people that we call cranks whose lives have been destroyed. And I don't squarely put all of that on the defense, but I put an enormous amount. And I think there has to be a way that you can righteously and vigorously defend people without destroying other people. I don't know what that path is, but I do think those of us who are creators should not indulge in these games, because if we do not give them oxygen, and I know this is turning into a bit of a speech by me, if we do not give defense attorneys who behave unethically any oxygen, there's no point to these games that they play. They're not going to get a Netflix show. They're not going to poison the jury pool. And so when you say, Áine, that you felt like you were alone, by fighting this battle, you became the people that people could come to find the truth, to get their answers questioned, or to get their questions answered, to clarify things. And you can see it in the comments and questions online right now, where people are asking for clarification about things, where people are learning new things. And if you hadn't stood there, if you hadn't stood in that breach and taken all that crap and fought so hard, there wouldn't be anyone here for those people to explain the truth. So
thank you. We really appreciate that. And I'm like, I'm like, I just feel bad for the people whose time has been wasted by, people kind of trust creators, and then sometimes they get sucked into this thing and they're just left after an outcome like this feeling confused, because they were told, again, there was no way he was going to get convicted because the case was so weak. And it's like,
and that makes me angry. I mean, I'll be blunt. It makes me angry that there are people out there, including people who are attorneys, and who go out and do these YouTube or true crime podcasts or what have you, and to be blunt, lie or misrepresent things. And in order to attract an audience, they actively lie and seek to undermine people's faith in the system. And they try to create an impression of this. It'd be impossible to have a guilty verdict, or the system is corrupt. Everybody is lying. Everybody's hopelessly corrupt in Indiana or Delphi. And they're undermining something very important and special. and they're doing it for no good reason. And they are hurting a lot of people, and they are disillusioning people. And there are people out here in the world today who believe that this verdict was the result of corruption or lies or misdeeds, and they've been misled and they've lost faith in the system for no good reason.
And I want to say this, none of these people are reporters. None of these people are investigative journalists. It's not like they've done the work and talked to a lot of people and compiled a huge story of corruption and like proved anything. It's just they're commenting based on vibes, and they're misrepresenting stuff. And I have contempt for all of them.
Yeah, and I would say to them, I don't play lawyer, so perhaps you shouldn't always play journalist. And I think Richard Allen gave us the answer to the question of why they did it. And it's a really interesting moment in one of his confessions where he's confessing to Dr. Monica Waller, his therapist, and he talks about how he confronted them on the bridge with the intent to sexually assault them, got spooked by the van going by, and later in that forced them across the creek. And he said that he was selfish and that the girls died because he didn't want to get caught so he could live. And I think so much of this, from the beginning of this crime, through the Redditors, through the creators, through the defense attorneys, has been driven by selfishness. And, I know all my listeners are not in love with the fact that I have compassion for Richard Allen, but it is an absolute tragedy for him and the families that a man who wanted to confess, for whatever reason, whether it was his family or whether it was attorneys, I don't know why, but a man who wanted to confess and verbally express that he wanted to keep the victims' families through going through this, either didn't or wasn't able to. And for me, I just think there's been so much selfishness and so little consideration for the pain that all of this has caused. Áine, there was one thing you said in your episode last night on the verdict, and it moved me to tears. And you had said something I had forgotten. And you had said that Abby had asked on the video that Libby had taken, Abby had asked Libby not to leave her. And then you choked up and you said, and they never left each other. And I kept thinking to myself, as I told you, and I will say it here, in their afterlife, you and Kevin never left them. And to me, that is the epitome of what journalism is, whether it's writing about Hiroshima or those of us who wrote about September 11th. We are here to bear witness, to tell the truth of what happened and the truth of the people. And I could not be more proud to call you all my friends and my colleagues.
Jason, that is so nice. And oh man, now you're going to make me cry again. And I keep thinking I can't cry anymore about this case. It's been, I really appreciate that.
You're too kind. You're too kind.
Honestly,
Thank you so
I feel like you give us too much credit. I feel like we've just been people out in the cold losing our minds for a month. But the one thing that made us, there were a couple times we got so frustrated with the process that we were kind of considering, you know what, maybe we'll just like peace out of here. And the thing that I kept thinking of was the families of these girls don't get that option. They don't get that privilege to just say, hey, let's take a day off. And these girls deserve to have people know what happened to them and who did it. And ultimately that the trial is about getting to that. And I just felt like we could not leave it. It would not be right. After we've come this far, it's like, and not only that, but people there with agendas essentially lying about what was going on. It just felt like we didn't have the option of leaving.
Yeah. Well, but Áine, you did have the option. Anybody can walk away. And you chose not to walk away. I remember earlier this year when this case was becoming very heavy for me, and you guys know this, I don't think I've talked to my listeners about this, but I had to pull out of all the social media groups and I had to get away from it. And through the encouragement of a friend, I went to Delphi and I walked the trails and I walked to the bridge. And for me, I came to peace with something inside of me related to it. And that rejuvenated my energy for the case. But any of us could walk away. Any of us could walk away. So I think you should acknowledge that you made a choice to stay. Just like we were talking about with Abby and Libby, every day you made a choice to stay. So I don't know. You should keep that in perspective. I don't think I give you too much credit. I think it's hard to even articulate the credit that you guys deserve for this. Just looking at all of the other creators who had money on their mind or had whatever, you could have chosen that path. You have bills to pay just like everyone else. You could have gone on to find the next thing. I think maybe you should give yourself a little bit more credit.
Well, thank you.
You're very kind.
Well, guys, I'm not even going to ask you what's next. I'm going to let
Thank
you
you.
guys go. But I will simply ask, like, what are you guys hoping for the next weeks and months for the families?
I really hope they just get some time to process this together and just kind of take a sigh of relief, hopefully, or at least I know for them it's not over. There'll be appeals. There will be attempts at appeals. Kevin is pretty confident that those are not going to go anywhere. But I mean, for the people who are at the center of this, who care the most about this, the families, I mean, it's going to feel like a thread. It's going to feel like something's coming back in a big way. And so in that way, it's not over. But I hope they can at the very least take some time to be together, have Thanksgiving and just at least feel that this first crucial step in a way is done and that justice was done and that the people who worked on this case, whether we're talking about investigators or volunteers like Kathy Shank or the prosecutorial team, they put a lot into this, and this outcome, I think, reflects how much so many people cared about these girls and seeing justice done after this horrific thing happened to them. So I hope they also feel like the outpouring of love from. I mean, we've heard from people from Australia, from Scandinavia, from all over the world. People care about Abby and Libby. People know now that Abby and Libby were heroes and that they helped solve their own case. And I hope they can feel some of that. And I hope that can counteract some of the negativity.
Oh, that's a great point. I think that, I know the gag order continues and part of me is like, the victims' families should have their voices back. But I also like one part of it, which is maybe it'll give them a little bit of peace. And you guys, I hope my relationship with you has taught you one thing. And I hope that you see in me that it is possible to feel love from a stranger. And I firmly believe that you can love people you don't know. And I hope that the families feel all of our love and all of your listeners' love. And I hope we find ways to continue to show it to them.
Absolutely. And I think these are families that have strived to make a difference where they have funds for getting scholarships for kids in that community. There's a beautiful park. People can donate to that and sort of keep the memory alive for these girls, both through education for other kids and through a beautiful space for kids to play safely.
And I hope people support those efforts and continue to support them in the years to come. And I hope for the family's sake that the day will come when Richard Allen is forgotten, his face is not all over social media, and people just remember these girls and that they lived and that their lives meant something. And there are ways for us to commemorate that and to honor that.
Yeah. And they're just, we say you have to be really careful about telling stories of victims lighting up the room. And Lord knows if I died, I didn't light up the room, guys.
You did.
But, but
No lies,
that said,
Jason.
but that said, I really do think these two victims truly lit up the room, and you can see it in the last moment on the videotape. There was something really special about them, and I'll put links to donate to the park in there, and just encourage any of you guys who are listening. Don't be shy to find ways to send them love and appreciation and support. And Kevin, I agree with you. Whatever Richard Allen's tale of life, whatever led him to that moment, his name really isn't the important name right now. And the important names are Abby and Libby.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. I on some level, when I think about him, I hope at some point he can come to terms with this and perhaps seek out, fully explaining what happened and taking ownership for what he did. I think we can have compassion for people who did horrible things. I think that's important. It's difficult, but it's important. But for me, maybe it's me being Catholic, but forgiveness requires penance and preferably confession. It's not something, I feel like there needs to be the minimum, and that's taking ownership and accountability for one's actions. And it seems that at some point he did try to do that, but obviously it's not ultimately what happened. And I think there is something poignant about that impulse being thwarted, however it happened. And but I agree, he should be forgotten. The thing that should what we should remain focused on is Abby and Libby, and just how many people they touched in their short lives, and the loss that is. They should be having families. They should be, I think they would be out of college by now. I mean, that there should be. There's an emptiness there that should be filled by these two beautiful souls, and they're gone. And it's a disgrace, and it's a tragedy because, one man decided that he wanted to exert dominance over women that day, that these families have had to suffer ever since as a result of that selfish choice.
Yeah. And, one of the things, I don't know if you guys said this or someone else said this, I heard this or thought it, it's really hard to tell because it's been a blur. But, Indiana Police Superintendent Doug Carter said at a press conference several years afterwards that he believed, and people gave him a lot of crap, but he believed that the killer was out there and that they were listening and they had some semblance of a conscience. And he ended up being right. Clearly, the confessions tell us that some part of Richard Allen wanted to minimize the suffering of the families afterwards. And Brett from the prosecutors just made a beautiful point, not recently, this was maybe several months or a year ago. He said that when people are convicted of the most heinous things, they still have the opportunity at that moment to make the most of their lives. And I do think Richard Allen has an opportunity to confess and give the families any answers they want, to have penance, to go to prison and be the best citizen he can for the people who are in there. So I think he still has a choice whether to be selfish or not. And I do hope he makes the right choice. I'm not holding out hope, particularly with who's surrounded by him. But Áine, I echo your point. Not only does he have an opportunity for forgiveness, but it's not forgiveness I think he should seek. I think he should seek making the most of what's left of his life, because that's all he can do.
I completely concur. And I think, he described himself as a selfish coward, and selfishness and cowardice are practices and behaviors. And he can choose at any time to do a brave thing and to do a selfless thing, which is to basically stop the nonsense and admit in detail what he did and stop putting these families through this farce, because the trial was a farce. I think I really do question how exactly we got to the point where he was even going to trial, given some of what we learned about sort of his experience in prison and him exhibiting significantly worse symptoms every time his attorneys would come visit him. I mean, we'll probably never know, but I would love to know more about that whole thing. But yeah, I think it's worth noting that just it's just it's a tragedy all around. But yeah, I don't want any focus on Alan to be taking away from what we need to be thinking about with these girls. And I think the reason why this case has resonated with so many people is because they see themselves in Libby and Abby. Everyone's probably gone on a walk on a really beautiful day with their best friend, right? I mean, this is an experience a lot of people have had, and they see themselves or their children or their loved ones in these girls, and they really are. I feel like, I feel like a lot of people, especially in Indiana, but certainly around the world, that's what attracted them to the case. That's what they wanted to know, what happened and why it was unsolved, even though one of these girls bravely captured an image of the killer on her phone. And we're going to be dedicated, even though the case is over, to continuing to establish the true facts and the truth in this case. I think Kevin and I told Kevin, I'm like, we're going to be the sanitation department, because there's been a lot of garbage strewn all over the streets and a lot of slime has been slopped all over everyone. And you know what? At the end of the day, we want to clean that up, because that is not fair to these girls. It's not fair to the families. It's not fair to anyone who worked on this case. And nor is it fair to the people of Delphi, who have been labeled as residents of the most corrupt city in the world, which is just could not be further from the truth and is ridiculous. And so, yeah, we're going to be the sanitation department. And that's how I feel we view our role going forward. Is that fair to say, Kevin?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, the fight for the truth is not over. And I have always believed that the truth is like a magnet. It will chase you no matter how far you try to run away from it. So I think, and I agree with you on that. Like, I think it's such a relatable story. I posted in your Murder Sheet discussion group, which, by the way, if anybody is not a part of, you should join. It's on Facebook. I posted in there about Abby and Libby last night, and I woke up to the post and it had like 40 plus comments in the morning. And one of the most beautiful, or the most beautiful comments to me were the ones who were where people were talking about who their Abby was and who their Libby was in their lives. And bless those girls. And I hope everybody can have an Abby and can have a Libby in their lives. Somebody who's willing to sacrifice everything for you.
Absolutely.
We should I was just going to joke we should stop recording before the bucket of tears under my desk fills. But go on.
I think that sort of positivity is something, and this is why I love I always trash the internet, and the internet's been terrible for true crime and whatnot, but there is a positive community of people who are rational, and a lot of them may disagree. They might have different opinions on a wide variety of cases, but they can still come into cases like this and not be abusive and be instead thoughtful and compassionate. And I love seeing those discussions unfold.
Kevin, do you want to throw anything in there before we go?
No, I think Áine said it very well.
Oh my gosh, that's always what you say.
I'm still emotional, so
I feel like I'm just totally numb right now. Honestly, I'm just kind of like, wow, that happened. And maybe it'll hit me in a month or something. I don't know. I'm like, I feel really weird. It's just, I keep thinking we're going back, and that it's not over. And so I keep on getting anxiety about something that's done. So it's very odd. And I think, Kevin, you might be having something similar.
Yeah, but it's over. It's over.
It is over.
It is. Yeah. And it really was like a nightmare for a lot of people. including those families and including all the people we're touched with. I mean, what I hope for us, right? We have power over what we can do. I hope we keep fighting for the truth. I hope we keep fighting for accountability in our community.
I'm so honored to know you and Brett and Alice, because I feel like you guys, and there are others too. There are people who do who do care about this sort of thing in ethics and true crime. And ethics and true crime isn't making sure everyone agrees on a case. It's about like what behavior is acceptable and should be considered okay for people to be doing in a real life case versus what is not acceptable. And I would love to see just a growing movement of people who are saying, this is okay, this is not okay, and we're going to act accordingly.
Yep. It's what we all, I think, want. And it's also a good point. Like Brett and Alice and I don't always agree on every case. I'm sure you guys and me don't always agree on every case, but what we agree on are truth, honesty, justice, right? Like we agree on the fundamental foundations of what can be a very, very positive community. So, all right, guys, I'm going to let you go. But stay safe. Be good.
You too, Jason. And again, we just want to thank you for everything. You've just been a tremendous, just bringing optimism and compassion to this situation. And we've been so burnt out at times. And I feel like you're the person who really helped us get through a lot in this.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad. All right, guys, have a good one.
All right, you too.
Before I go, I want to invite all of you true crime fans to an event that we're going to be happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota on December 7th at 10 a.m. at the Hotel Ivy in downtown Minneapolis. There, we're going to get together with podcasters for a live show. We're going to do a live investigation into a real case, have several panels, and also have some fun. So if you're interested in true crime and you're in the area or you're willing to travel, come join us. You can find our group through the Silver Linings Handbook podcast website, or you can visit our Facebook group, True Crime Podcasting in Action Minneapolis, to sign up for the event, which will cost you nothing. We're looking forward to seeing you. And if you'd like to join us for more discussions with me and other listeners, we can be found on most social media platforms, including a listener-run Facebook group called the Silver Linings Fireside Chat. For deeper conversations with our guests and live conversations with other listeners, you can also join us on our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Silver Linings Handbook. I'm Jason Blair, and this is the Silver Linings Handbook podcast. We'll see you guys all soon.
You've got questions? O'Reilly Auto Parts has answers. Need a pro you can trust? We've got that too. No matter what you need, our professional parts people have the training and expertise to help you do things right. Deep automotive knowledge, just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Build up to Black Friday with savings all month long at Lowe's. Get up to 50% off select major appliances, plus take an additional 10% off when you buy select major appliances. And don't wait to pick up holiday inflatables under $20. Don't wait to save, in-store or online now, because Lowe's knows deals. Valid 11/6 through 12/4. Cannot be combined with additional discounts. See Lowe's.com for details and qualifying items while supplies last.